Welcome to Conveyancing Matters with Lorraine and Stu. Join us for a chat about all things property. So, hello Stu, how are you?
I'm very good, Lorraine. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. So I can't quite believe that we are doing now our Conveyancing Matters Summer News 2024
I
chat.
know.
It's
I know.
unbelievable, isn't it?
It is, and it's such a sort of a thing, a cliche, isn't it? When you get older, you say time flies, but absolutely, this year, where has it gone?
It absolutely is. And well, where do we want to start, Stu?
The news,
Yeah, let's.
funnily enough. So I suppose the first thing to maybe put out there is our networking event.
Yes.
We're back in London. Slight change of venue. So where are we this time?
We're going to be at the Wood in Shades pub, actually, in the nice little restaurant upstairs, right smack bang near Liverpool Street Station. So it's really, really easy for people to find. And the date for the save the date for everyone's diaries is Wednesday, the 13th of November. And usual 6 to 9 p.m. Lots of networking, and it would be great to see people there. And we will put more out on social media in due course, as they say.
Absolutely, yes. We're going to be inviting as many sort of lawyers as possible, and other people from the industry, just to have a good chat about what's going on. So we're going to let everybody know what the subject will be very shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. So where next, Stu?
So you're gagging, aren't you, for me to sort of bring up the subject of Radio 4, just because someone's been on it, hasn't it? I was trying to get those pauses in there. You've been desperate for me to bring it up, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. So
Who was on Radio 4 earlier this week? Oh,
me.
really? Wow.
I know, I know you're an old hand. I know you're an old hand at this sort of stuff. But yeah, so it was quite nice to be asked to go on You and Yours on Monday, the 2nd of September. If anybody's interested and they want to find it on BBC Sounds, yeah, I was on Radio 4, Stu, talking about indemnity insurance actually. So a bit of a zingy topic. But what was interesting actually, I said that for anybody that wants to go and find it, I will stick it on, stick it on the website and stuff in due course. But the emphasis of the show was really, should consumers do their own research around issues relating to indemnity insurance? And of course, as you know and I know, Stu, the answer to that is absolutely no, because it might scupper your chances of getting indemnity insurance. So obviously that's the line I had to hold, obviously.
And how did it go? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I did actually. It was fine. Obviously, pretty short and sharp, as you well know. You've done it before. Yeah, I think it was fine. I decided what my message was, which I think was the key thing. I could have gone off on a rent charges tangent, but didn't. Probably to the relief of just about everybody. So yeah, it was fine. I enjoyed it. I do it again. And if anybody wants to find it, as I say, it's Monday the 2nd of September. You and Yours, and I think I'm about 13 minutes in case anyone's interested. But probably a far more interest and import to property lawyers now, lovely conveyancers watching this too, is, well, just the issues that rumble on around, in particular, the property information form and material information more generally. So I thought there would just be a sort of couple of points really that we could highlight about that. I mean, for anybody that knows and that is interested, I mean, the Law Society back in July, they survived a vote of no confidence regarding their sort of ill-fated 5th edition of the property information form, which, as we know, sort of absorbs all of the material information stuff that trading standards, unilaterally decided is what agents should be putting out there. The date for taking part in the Law Society's consultation has closed, but over 1,200 have signed up for it, Stu, and they've got their independent market research company that started to do surveys. I'm afraid that it all feels a bit like a fait accompli. I've not done the survey yet. I've obviously signed up. I've signed up to be on a focus group, Stu. Whether anybody would actually ask me to do it's another thing. I want to be constructive, so I will suggest the things that should be taken out of it. But I thought what was probably the most interesting thing, Stu, and something you'll certainly have a view on, is that the Stephen Larkham and the Property Law Action Group have reported that a professional indemnity insurance broker already, QPI Limited, trading as Quality PI, apparently, have already said that using the 5th edition of the property information form will result in increased premiums. And I wondered what your view on that would be.
Well, it was coming, wasn't it? And just feels like another reason, not to use it as such. But I don't know where we're going with this now. It seems to be the same old thing we're talking about, doesn't it? And I suppose from a positive point of view, at least, there's a platform where people can give their opinions, and hopefully, the Law Society is going to listen to them. That's the key, isn't it?
Yeah.
Is it one of those where we're just all going to give our piece and that'll be the end of it, and we're going to be thrust upon anyway, or is anybody going to listen?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, I've got my suspicions, but I do wonder, actually. I mean, I've thought this for quite a long time, actually, whether it's the view of the professional indemnity insurers that might drive this. But kind of leading on from that, Stu, fairly small research sample, but and people can find it, certainly. Conveyancing news outlets have reported on it. That an analysis that was carried out, today's Conveyancer reported it, amongst others, analysis of 118 Rightmove listings from July to August show, interestingly, significant non-compliance with material information requirements. The most notable information not provided was accessibility, 84% of listings blank. Well, it's the point we made about accessibility. It's an incredibly important thing. Has the property been modified for, to provide access, for people that need it, and modifications for people that need it? Essential for those people, but the majority of properties won't have it. So why is it a question that's asked on every property? I find it bizarre. But let's get more, 59% of agents didn't put a single entry in relation to utilities, rights and restrictions. So, I mean, what do we expect agents to do? 74% of listings lacked data on the size of the property.
But this is the point, isn't it? If 59% don't even attend to the, putting the utility details on there, what hope have we got with the more complex issues?
Well, you've exactly, and apparently 17% of the listings didn't have EPCs, Stu. And really, and again, just to go to the heart of whether or not this material information fiasco is ever going to be workable. Interestingly, the negotiator has reported that property listings portals, Rightmove, Zoopla, On the Market, so all of the big boys, frankly, have suggested that they will not be taking disciplinary action against estate agents who don't comply with material information guidance. They want to take a more supportive approach. And I mean, frankly, on one level, that's great. But what I thought was just really interesting about, some of the comments, Rightmove have said the vast majority of listings do now include information from material information part A. Stu, this is the basics that we were expecting agents to put on for years. Council tax, asking price and tenure.
I know. I mean, can you even believe we're actually having a conversation where we're talking about the asking price?
No.
It's just preposterous. And another reason why the whole thing seems completely flawed. But I don't know.
Yeah,
we can talk about this all day long, and there's been so much chat now about the whole thing.
I agree, but I do think it's relevant to continue to highlight the flaws, because frankly, if the big boys aren't going to play, then surely trading standards have got to look again, which sort of by definition means the Law Society must have to. I mean, Zoopla said this is going to require high levels of investment, compliance with all this stuff, high levels of investment. So ultimately, Stu, similarly with the professional indemnity insurance premiums, is it all going to come down to money? And I think the answer may be yes. If agents, portals and everyone else, Uncle Tom Cobley, do not have the resources to put all this ridiculous information out there, ill-advised in any event, in many cases, it should have fallen out of bed a long time ago. And Zoopla also said, we want to see it, and this is, I thought, was really telling. We want to see everyone work together to agree on a high level of compliance across, and here's the rub for me, the most important fields for consumers. So actually, to me, implicit in that, Stu, and I might be wrong, and if somebody from Zoopla wants to come on, I'd be delighted to see you, but I interpret that to mean the most important fields for consumers. Zoopla are making the value judgment, and they're basically saying, dear trading standards, we're not going to comply with everything. We don't expect our agents to comply with everything. They want to go for the most important fields for consumers. Surely implicit in that statement is we can't do everything.
No, absolutely. Which then defeats the whole, the whole theory, doesn't it?
Yeah, frankly. So as you say,
Again, there just seems to be such a lack of appetite for the whole thing.
yes.
You know, agents have got no appetite. These selling platforms obviously have no appetite. Consumers, or should we say clients, do they have the appetite? You know, who actually has the appetite in the first place? If nobody wants something, unless it becomes mandatory, then it's never going to happen, is it?
Exactly.
Right.
And yet, the Law Society appears to be continuing its crusade for the PIV and continuing to think it's appropriate for sellers in particular to be at a massively heightened risk of misrepresentation. I simply don't get it. But anyway, so kind of moving on, money perhaps is the theme of this news. I really just wanted to point out that you know, the SRA has put out really a sort of reminder and put out a warning notice: money missing from client account. They remind us what rule 6.1 of the accounts rules tell us. The solicitor's accounts rules, you know, regulated SRA regulated firms have got to correct breaches promptly. Hilariously, really, the SRA put out the warning notice on the 21st of June 24, and its introduction states, any deficiency on client account exposes clients and others to a risk of financial loss. Money must be replaced with extreme urgency, and the sorts of behaviours of concern that firms ought to be looking out for: failure to deliver bills, suggestion of overcharging, borrowing from clients. But Stu, really, I do wonder whether, you know, old cynic that I am, you know, the LSB's, the Legal Services Board report on the SRA's handling of the Axiom Ince debacle hasn't yet come out, and you just can't help wondering whether the SRA is trying to sort of get on the front foot and be doing a bit of saber rattling about client money and the importance, when essentially what many might say that on the SRA's watch, Axiom Ince managed to snuffle away £64 million from client account, and it's gone before anybody notices. So
of course the idea, the SRA and the CLC both made comment on, you know, potentially firms not having a client account this summer, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's another thing, isn't it? You know, I wondered, you know, whether the above was a precursor to law firms not having client accounts. I mean, you know, as a law firm owner, Stu, what's your view on that?
Oh, that would be such a big cultural change, wouldn't it? Again, I mean, there's merit in both sides of that argument, but that would be such a big cultural change. The resource shift would be incredible, wouldn't it? What would be your opinion?
Well, oddly, and I think it probably comes back to the heart of a lot of things. You know, you and I talk about this every single time we speak, really, Stu, the crippling cost of indemnity insurance. So curiously, if firms didn't have to have client accounts, and if they were therefore massively, you know, suddenly protected from you know, cyber crime and cyber risk and having money nicked and all the rest of it, well, actually there'd be a massive upside to that. And if it was going to have
a massive proportion of your risk that on a day-to-day basis that you have to deal with could be alleviated.
But and of course, if it had a really positive effect on indemnity insurance premiums, I think, look, you know, there'd be a lot that was attractive. But I think the devil would always be in the detail, and I think firms might well say, well, God, if we don't have, you know, who else is going to be better equipped to hold client money than us?
So that would be, wouldn't it? If we think back of all the things that have happened in conveyancing over the sort of time we've been involved, that would be as big as anything if that change is ever to come in.
Yeah. And I mean, it's perhaps not also a coincidence that PEXA is now in the UK market. If anybody wants to go back and find it, we spoke to a nice lady from PEXA a while ago, you know, one of the sort of, you know, money platforms. So one can't help thinking that those 2 points might be inextricably linked. But
I think the word cashless conveyancing is something that is going to be on the horizon, though, isn't it? I think it's going to be something that will only grow and snowball. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this in months and years to come.
Oh God, I hope I'm retired by then, Stu.
It's certainly a subject that's going to come up a lot more, I think.
It is. But the CLC, Stu, have put out some useful stuff.
On source of funds and source of wealth. You know, a lot of the stuff that comes out from our governing body, sometimes you can question, but I actually think that the notes that the CLC put out are actually really good. They're well worth a look for anybody, whether you're CLC or SI regulated. It doesn't matter. They really are a good source of literature that you can refer to. And I think the way they've now broken, your checks down, feels to me that at last we're actually moving to a more sensible scenario where we actually detail ID checks as a separate entity, source of funds as a separate entity, and source of wealth as a separate entity. Whereas I think sort of, the ID check platforms and all the tech companies that we speak to, and people maybe outside of our industry in the property world, they'll talk about sort of ID checks, and I'm still asked, oh, well, can you accept, this passport if it's emailed over from a mortgage broker or an estate agent? And you're like, well, no. There's a lot more to it than that. I think actually separating it now and treating it almost as three separate subjects goes a long way to sort of educating everybody. This is what we have to do. But the guidance, though, is really good. They're well worth a look.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, of course, because to be fair, Stu, that's a stance that you've taken for yonks years, quite frankly.
That, but yeah.
So CLC guidance on source of wealth and source of funds useful for everybody. I mean, we can't do a new.
We've used that as well already. That guidance when we've actually given that to other people, where we've actually been asked, and somebody said, "Well, can you accept this?" Or somebody said, "We've already done this." We've actually used that guidance as a resource to say, look, have a look at this. That is not acceptable. This is what we have to do.
It's useful, isn't it? And with clients, and as you say, other parties, because, the reality is we shouldn't have to justify this stuff.
No.
But if you do have something from a regulator that says, well, this is best practice, as you say, that's a very good way of sort of closing down the naysayers, isn't it? Or the people that don't want to play.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a number of people recently, especially where we've maybe taken over files. We've done a lot of work recently with firms that have been intervened. We've taken over files and it's just copy ID in there, stuff like that. And again, from other entities, mortgage brokers, where they're trying to help by getting the deal pushed through, but no, you can't just accept copy ID. It's a hell of a lot more. And in fact, actually, one of the biggest things probably over the last sort of 20 years that's taken our kind of resource and sapped our time. The fact we've really got to investigate not just the client, not just the property our client's buying, but also the client, the money, and where it came from.
Yeah, and of course, arguably, going back to the earlier point, well, if we didn't have a client account, we wouldn't have the potential for dirty money coming into our client account. So would we no longer have that such an onerous responsibility? One can't help feeling that the regulators won't let that one go.
Yeah, I can't see that.
Well, nor can I. But
wouldn't that be nice?
Well, that would be the only major upside, one of the major upsides for firms, wouldn't it? If the money isn't being paid to the firm, it's being paid to the third party managing the account. Well, we'll let them take the responsibility and have the insurance burden. I suspect that's not going to be how it works out, but
absolutely not. But
we can't have a summer news, Stu, without just mentioning leasehold reform in passing. I mean, everybody knows now that the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 24 sort of picked into part just before Parliament was dissolved and has got royal assent. The snag with it is, and it's the act that everybody says everyone's been waiting for. It made a couple of sort of minor changes to the Building Safety Act that came into force on the 24th of July 24. It also actually, of some relevance, abolished the Section 121 remedies for the historic rent charges, not estate rent charges, but a lot of the big stuff around this act's due, increasing standard lease extensions to 990 years, giving leaseholders greater transparency for service charge, all of those things. So the seismic stuff on leasehold reform, long leasehold reform, isn't yet in force. It's suggested that that's not going to happen before 26, possibly even as far as 28. And I've already read, Stu, that one of the most controversial parts of the act is essentially, in a nutshell, really sort of removing marriage value. And of course, that is the area where freeholders pension funds and and everyone else holding freeholds is going to say, well, actually it's not up to legislation to intervene and essentially take the value of our asset. There's going to be legal challenges, and I think I read that a large freeholder is already in the process of doing that. So the act is there, it's on the statute books, it hasn't been brought into force yet in the vast in bulk. So personally I think it's a watch this space, quite frankly. So we still are where we are with lease extensions, quite frankly. And perhaps just to sort of finish off our news, Stu, sort of 2 or 3 changes to a couple of land registry practice guides. They bring out lots of changes. We obviously only tend to pick up some of the most relevant for conveyancers, and a small but significant amendment to Practice Guide 8 on execution of deeds, which I do think actually, funny enough, is relevant for conveyancers on a day-to-day basis. The land registry have said that they won't accept separate execution pages which have been added to a deed, or execution pages taken from separate documents reassembled to form a single deed. Now, it's undoubtedly the case that conveyancers, and I'm sure other lawyers, get a document signed and then the document gets changed, and the previously signed signature page is just sort of judiciously stapled to the back of the altered document, and the land registry have sort of said that shouldn't be happening, because of course the whole point is that something is signed and witnessed as a deed, and the deed
quite right too.
The deed you're signing should be the clearly the final document. It shouldn't be subject to amendment after it's been signed. How the land registry is actually going to kind of work that out is a different
not quite sure on that one.
But there we go. So watch out for that. And I mean, just a sort of minor point really, but if anybody sort of as a learning point really wants to go and have a look at Practice Guide 6, it struck me that a month or 2 ago the land registry seemed to be putting out information that technical land law that we should all already know, but the fact they're putting it out suggests to me that we don't. But they've made some amendments to Practice Guide 6 on devolution of debt on death of a registered proprietor. So again, very practical for conveyancers. And they've clarified, Stu, how the rule of survivorship affects joint proprietors and the situation of PRs. So, if you are a bit wobbly on that topic, then do go and have a look at Practice Guide 6, because that has been updated. I would have thought lots of people should know it, but I'm surmising that the land registry conclude that people don't, and they're raising lots of requisitions on it. Ergo, they need to update Practice Guide 6. But this could be an important sort of final point to make, Stu.
Yeah, I think from October, we're no longer going to be able to lodge certified documents when we're talking about sort of first applications. I think this is going to be a bit of a contentious subject in the future, maybe, especially if things were to go missing. But yeah, we're not going to be able to lodge certified documents rather than originals. So that's a bit of a point of concern, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the Land Registry have put out a blog on it. They obviously, a few years ago, allowed firms to submit certified copies on a first registration application. The firm would certify that they continued to hold the originals. From October, as you say, the Land Reg have done a complete volte-face on that. They've said that from October, not sure exactly what date yet, more information will come out. All applications for first registration must be accompanied by the relevant deeds and documents, i.e. the originals. I have to say, and there's more on it in Practice Guide 1, actually, in case anybody's interested. But I think our advice to you, isn't it, is if you're sending something original to the Land Registry, for goodness sake, keep a certified copy of it. So you're still going to be certified.
You just got to be mindful of the way you send it, first of all. Don't just chuck it in the normal post. But also, making sure that every document you send is actually, kept in your office, certified copies, just in case. I'm sure everybody's going to have the odd one go walkabouts, but we'll see what happens.
They are, particularly as the Land Registry is still taking 12 to 18 months to do a first registration.
Well, it's just a crazy situation. It almost kind of the ethos of the title deeds and what they represent, and we're just popping them in the post into, I don't know, it just seems a silly situation to me. I can't see what was wrong with sending the certified documents in the first place. I don't know what's come of it to make that an issue, but
no, they have put something in their blog, but I think there are risks there. Well, Stu, so quite a sort of potpourri, some common themes, I think. So thanks very much for that, lovely.
No problems.
We will do another YouTube chat soon, and as soon as there's anything new to be said on the sort of update front, we'll be there. We'll be there, Stu.
Absolutely. Take care, Lorraine.
Take care. Bye.